Hello and welcome to episode 2 of some basic Java tutorials. I'm Alan Oden.
And I'm Dalton Allen.
This episode we're going to be covering some more variable types as well as some more statements, namely the for and while statements. First off, we're going to be going over arrays, and Dalton here will tell you about that.
Okay,
as I type it out.
So an array is essentially, the easiest way to think of it is probably a list of something. So we're going to start off with an integer array, and all you have to do is, after you declare the variable, as you can see, there is the two brackets, the open and close brackets after your integer. That's just declaring it as an array. So now what you can do from here is you can add things to the array. Okay, so now Alan, if you'd like, we can show you how you can use this essentially as a list.
Mm-hmm. Before that though, now arrays work a little bit different from other variables. A lot of variables you can just go in straight using them before you define them because it'll have a null value. With arrays though, that does not work. For this case, we're just going to have this be a new integer array because that's what it is. And inside the square brackets here, you have the number of items in the list. Now there is more than one way of setting this up, but this is just one of them. So this will create an array with 3 items in the array.
Okay, I'll explain my way quick here. Get a new line, if I can type.
And these are both valid ways. It just depends on how you're using them that you're going to want to set it up differently.
Yep, each one has its positives and negatives. And now this way, you can go straight into go like that, put some braces in there.
You're going to want a semicolon. The colon.
Oh, I'm good at this. Right? There we go.
There you go.
Alright. And now, instead of doing that, now you can go straight into adding them. And since I can add integers, we can go things like that. What the, oh.
My mouse is messed up right now, sorry.
Like this, and I can and I can continue putting as many integers in here as I care to. There's 3, and they just all have to be separated with a comma. The space isn't really needed in there, but you can. All right, Alan, okay. Continue.
And now an array is just an easy way of storing multiple items of the same type. Now, say we wanted to access the 3rd number in this array. We are going to do items 2.
Original naming, I know.
Mm-hmm. And then here. Now in here we're going to put 3 because 2. Sorry about this. 2. Now this here, you might think it would give you the 2nd number, but will actually give you the 3rd. Naming for arrays starts at 0. This is item 0, item 1, item 2, and item 3.
It's a good general rule to remember when you're dealing with pretty much almost any programming language, especially Java, that when you start counting at 0 and not 1.
Yep. And then just going into some basic functions with these, you can get the length of it, which will just tell you how many items are in it. This does give you the actual length, not the final value.
Yes.
So say we're doing this one, this will give you a value of 4, not 3.
Little confusing, but just something you gotta learn and know.
And like other regular variables, you can set these items 2, and say we
that worked real well.
And say we want to set the 0th item. That sets the 0th item, which is this one right here, to 5. And just like anything else, you can print it. Here, this is 2.
Make sure that it will be in the correct if statement.
Yes. Placement is still very important. And if we were to run this,
that's equal to false. It's not going to do it.
Yep, and yeah, but
oh, I see what you're doing.
It's lagging. And you can print it just like anything else. Now, the next variable that we're going to be going over is called a list. Lists are very similar to arrays, except that it's a little easier to work with them. Now we're going to name this list... what should we name it? Ooh, you may be tempted to name things like this.
I would highly not.
Do not do that.
It's going to confuse you.
You can, but...
Bad things are going to happen to good people.
Okay. And now lists, when you're defining them, they're kind of weird. You can define them as a list, which is what you might think that you want to do, but it's better to do it this way.
Lists can get a little confusing, so no, if we don't screw up on it.
If my keyboard decides to stop being weird. And then fix the import, and it's like this.
There you go.
Now you can define it as a list, but if you define it as an array list, it works better. Defining it as a regular list will make things return things not quite the way you might think. Now the cool thing about lists is that you don't have to tell it how many items there will be when you create the list. So say we want to add an item, we want to add something to the list. Oops, we still haven't changed that yet.
That should be changed right now.
Yes, we're going to name it Pickles.
Dude, I could totally...
Or Pickled.
Okay.
This is Pickled.
A pickled list?
No, that's something. A pickled list is something completely different. Pickled.add. Now, you're going to see a bunch of stuff here. We'll go over some of it later. You're going to want to just do add right here. And this will add an object to the end of the list.
Any object you wish.
Any object. It can be a number. It can be a string. Oh, and just going back, arrays can be for any object you can imagine.
Yes.
Everything, well, I'm sure there's some exceptions, but none that I know of, can be converted to an array.
So you could, instead of the numbers, you could always have, strings.
Yeah. And lists like this. And say you want to find something from a list. You go pickle.get, and this will get the object from the array that is at the current specified key, which is another name for which location it is actually at. So it loads here. Now, say you want to use a list, but you want the array functionality.
This is where this gets fun.
You can just turn it into a list. Turn it into an array. Right there. .toArray, and it'll return an array with the values of all of the objects in it.
It's as easy as that.
Mm-hmm. Now, there's some other cool things you can do with arrays. Say that we want to know if this array contains an object that has the value of 1, 2, 3. Pickled.contains. And then you simply put in what you want to know if it contains it. Now this is a boolean, we covered these last episode. If this contains an object anywhere in the list, doesn't matter how many there are, if there is at least one of them, this will return true.
And now with that, I would recommend some caution, especially if there could possibly be an error in your code. Because if there's a possibility for more than one of the same object to be in that list, it will still return true no matter if there's one or if there's 100 of them. Just some caution.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so on to some more of the statements. We covered if statements, which are pretty easy, some base level stuff.
Yes.
What I'm going to do right now is go over For statements. Now, for statements are set up similarly to if statements. Type for, and then inside of the parentheses here, let me put this on a new line, you put the arguments for the for statement. Now, just a basic setup for most for statements, you're going to want to define an integer, just a brand new one. Most people call it I, and set it equal to 0. There are other instances where you're going to want to change it up a little bit, but this is how most of them start off. Now, for this example, we're just going to we're going to print to the chat all of the items in the array items2. So, this will set it up so that I equals 0, and it will re-execute this code a certain number of times as long as I is less than items2 dot length. And this, like I said, will execute it however many times there are objects in this array. And now, when it's done executing it once, you want to increment the variable. And now you're going to want some curly brackets. Okay. So, we're just going to set up the system print. System.out.println. And now we want to print everything in the array. We were discussing before on how you can get specific objects from an array. You can do the same thing here. And instead of picking a specific number, you type I, or whatever variable name you chose here. This will get whatever item it was that's in that location that it's currently on. I'm just going to execute this to kind of show you what I mean here, because I don't feel like that I'm properly expressing the way that it's working right now. So it loads up here. And here we go. Now remember that this first one here is something that's just printed before. What it does here is we set the first one to equal 5, so it prints 5, then it prints the second one, the third one, and then the fourth one. This is just a way of iterating through a certain number of times. Some other things you can do with for statements are just more math type things. Say we want to multiply 2 by itself 7 times. We're just going to name this integer PR. Now we're going to, instead of iterating through until the length of items2, we're going to iterate it through until 7. This will execute the code 7 times. So here we're going to want to double the number, like we said, PR equals PR times 2. Now every time this code executes, PR is going to double itself. So just to show you how this is going to work, we're just going to print PR every time it executes through and re-execute the code. And here it is. And here you can see that it doubles every time. Now, for statements can also be set up similar to what Dalton here is going to explain in a little bit. You can set them up to do things infinitely. They will never stop. I would very much not recommend this under most circumstances. However, there are some that will work good under that we will get to at a later date. If you want to set this up to just run through it infinitely, you do that. And now here, we're just going to execute this, and we're going to have to stop the program manually because it has no end now.
This could get a little scary.
This might lag significantly. And now in this case, it will actually end because there is a maximum that integers can possibly get to. So the program itself will crash once it reaches that point. But you can still see, yep, and it hit it already. Let's see. Lag, you can go away now. Yeah, and that just shows how fast this stuff actually goes. Because you can see here, it just keeps doubling every time. Okay, I'm just going to reset up this array here. Or this for statement, sorry. Okay, Dalton, you want to take over?
Okay, now this is kind of a cool function that has a lot of use, and it can get you out of some pretty tricky spots. For lack of a better way to put this, is it's going to be a for statement used as a search function, essentially. Alright, so what are we going to search through? We're going to search through an array, so why not use the wonderful one that we set up before? So since we're using integers, we're going to have to, again, use an integer like the integer I. And now you're going to want to put a colon and the array that you're going to search through. So in this case, it would be items 2. Alright, so let me delete this here. So now what this is going to do is integer I, because the integer items, or the array items 2 is an integer array. It'll go through every single one of the possibilities it has, and it will do whatever it is here. So the first time it runs through, it'll put integer I equal to 234, because in items 2, that's what we have it equal to. So the easiest way to explain this is just have it print it to show you. And we can go like this. Alright. Get rid of some white space here.
Alt-Shift-F. Again, Alt-Shift-F is Alt-Shift.
Oh, I know the keys of a keyboard.
Here. Alt-Shift-F formats your code for you, spaces everything out, gets rid of extra white space.
Okay. I actually use a different coding IDE, so a little foreign here. Anyway, alright. So let's run the code.
Now this does similar to what I had set up before, where it iterates through the array, except this time it iterates through it a little bit differently and a little more efficiently, depending on how you want to use it.
Especially because this will go through all of them, you know, and no matter what the length is. As long as you can make it, it'll always go through it. It can save a little bit of error on your part, a little bit easier to remember to type, and much more functionality.
But there's also a little less functionality in some other areas.
True, very true. I would not argue one bit.
This time it won't tell you how many times it's gone through the for statement. It'll just tell you the current value.
Right. Of course, you could set it up to do it that way.
You could, but
again, the other way would be good for that. A good reason, like I said, for a search function. So if you know somewhere in your array something exists, so this would be one of those times where you could throw an if statement in here. If integer I equals, whoa.
Yep. Sorry about that.
It's my bad. I keep bumping the mouse pad. Okay, so equals, say 12, because that is one of them in there. It will go, we'll have it print something else, like, oh, oops, yeah.
Here's a little thing. Everyone can forget something a little bit at a time. You don't want to redefine the variable right here.
Oh, super silly me. Alright, anyway. I didn't even spell that right.
I think the
here.
math said.
Alright. So now what this will do is it'll run through it, and when it equals 12, which, as you can see up here, is happens to be the last one, it will also print out...
It'll print the word matched before it prints the value of the variable.
Okay, so here we go, just to explain this quick.
Once it loads up here.
And there you go. As you can see.
And this also works, like Dalton said, as a search function. If you want to know if it does exist, but you don't know for sure if it does, like here we're just going to put in a number that we know isn't in here, like 1, 2, 3. That's not in there. So it'll run through it, but it will not print matched because there is no match for that. And with arrays, the lists that we went over earlier, you can do search functions a little bit differently, but this is just another way of doing it if you don't want to deal with the lists themselves.
Yes. Just kind of taking advantage of one more thing a for statement can do, really.
And see here, it did not print matched. Okay.
Get into some while statements here?
Yep.
Okay, now, while statements are a little bit interesting. I wouldn't necessarily highly recommend them. There's a few reasons, a few good reasons to use them, like a game update loop, if that's your thing, or whatever, something like that, that is going to be run through essentially from the start to the end. That, in that case scenario, is a good way to do it. Again, a for statement could kind of be used there, but I would definitely recommend a while statement, like if you were a game loop for paused or not, something like that. Okay, so a while statement is very easy. So it's just while. If I could quit bumping it, I think that'd be great, wouldn't it?
Yep, you just move the mouse up here. There you go.
All right. So while this, and once
it's just lagging.
I know. Okay, so what this means now is, well, whatever in here, so
This takes a boolean.
it takes any type of boolean again, just like an just like an if statement. So we can use one of our old booleans. So if toot, it'll do that, and it will run what is ever in here until you switch toot to something else.
It will do this code, loop through it until tutorial or tut here is set to false.
Yes, that is exactly what it will do. Pretty self-explanatory. Be careful for running into infinite loops here, because it can really mess things up really quickly.
You really want to make sure there is something inside of the loop that will set tut to false, otherwise it will become an infinite loop.
Again, with the for statements, it's the same thing. Just something to watch out for, because it can wreck something really, really quickly.
Now, what I'm going to do here, just to show you kind of how this works, is kind of like setting up a for statement while using a while statement, except you set it up in a little bit of a different order. Integer, and we're going to name this one count, and set it equal to 0. Now in here, we're going to have it, every time it runs through, increase count by 1. Now to do this, you could do here, you could do that, but there is an easier way. Replace all of this with plus plus. Okay, and now we want this loop to exit. Oh, here, we're gonna just add this quick. .out.println. And now if count is see if we can spell it correctly. If it's greater than 6, we will set tut to false. And format the code here quick.
And of course,
Again.
then that should break your while statement once it is greater than 6.
Just execute this, and it should count from 1 to 6 and then stop. Again, printing out all of the things that we had before here, too. Here we go. And here you can see it counting. Oh.
We have all the other stuff.
Okay, something I forgot to look at here. This will actually count to 7, because it's when it's greater than 6.
Yes.
Okay. For the interest of keeping episodes to a manageable time, we're going to move return types to next episode, and we will also be covering switch statements and
we will also be starting putting some of this together, so you can actually do more than just count or use one functionality. Spice things up a little bit.
Bring things to more like what real code usage is going to be like. This has been Alan Odin.
And Dalton here.
Good luck programming.
And may the code be with you.